some video game characters don't become legends because they always do the right thing. Some of these characters become unforgettable because they're just constantly fighting against the darkness inside themselves. Like, they aren't even heroes, they aren't perfect heroes, better said, and they certainly aren't traditional superheroes as well. Instead, they exist somewhere between salvation and damnation, sort of making every decision feel like another battle for their own soul. See, that kind of conflict is timeless, and very few comic book characters embody it better than Spawn. See, long before superhero games became one of the biggest genres in the industry, Spawn was already showing players that comic book worlds could be violent, could be mysterious, emotional, and surprisingly mature at the same time. During the 90s, Todd, the anti-hero, appeared across multiple games on different platforms, including one of the most memorable releases of the Super Nintendo era, Spawn for the Super Nintendo. It was developed and published by Acclaim in 1995, and the game blended this side-scrolling action, some platforming supernatural powers, and comic-inspired storytelling into a sort of an experience that really stood apart from many other licensed games of its own time. And while it really wasn't perfect in any way, it successfully captured the dark atmosphere surrounding Al Simmons, captured that dark atmosphere, and remained a nostalgic favorite among longtime Spawn fans as well. Here's the thing, for that and many other reasons, that's why people occasionally begin imagining what a true modern remake could look like. First of all, to be clear, there is currently no official remake of the Super Nintendo Spawn game in development. Todd McFarlane, in fact, has spoken over the years about wanting Spawn to return to gaming in a meaningful way, and the characters appeared as a guest fighter in titles like Mortal Kombat 11. However, there has been no announcement of a full standalone remake based on, the classic Super Nintendo original game. Any discussions about such a project remains entirely speculative. Even so, the idea feels surprisingly exciting. Not because people simply missed another old game, but because Spawn's universe feels like it was created for modern technology. Like, imagine beginning the remake with almost complete silence. Night has already swallowed the city, rain falling steadily across empty rooftops, while distant police sirens coming from somewhere beyond the skyline, and neon lights barely cutting through the fog as these abandoned buildings disappear into darkness. Then the camera slowly moving and capturing all that atmosphere. Something moving in the shadow. Not quickly, not dramatically, just enough to remind you that someone's been watching this city for a very long time. Then Spawn steps forward. No explosions, no dramatic speech, no unnecessary introductions. The cape slowly unfolds behind him, almost like a living creature, before he disappears once again into the darkness. In fact, that opening alone immediately establishes something the original hardware probably couldn't even imagine. Spawn's greatest weapon has never been his chains, or his necroplasm, or even his incredible strength. It's the atmosphere. Everything surrounding him feels haunted. That atmosphere deserves to become the foundation of a remake, if ever considered. One of the most fascinating aspects of Spawn has always been the world itself as well. Where unlike many superhero universes where good and evil remain clearly separated, Spawn sort of exists inside a reality where heaven and hell manipulate humanity from the shadows, while these ordinary people rarely even understand the larger war unfolding around them every day. Every street corner, every abandoned church, cemetery, and forgotten warehouse carries this feeling that something ancient may be watching from just beyond human sight. Modern hardware, of course, could finally bring that vision very much to life. The city never stops feeling alive or dangerous. Traversal could become one of the game's defining strengths as well. Back on the Super Nintendo, movement naturally remained limited by technology, but Spawn's abilities have always suggested something much larger. His living cape should become one of the most versatile mechanics in the entire game, or any other game. Instead of just functioning only as a decoration, it allows players to glide across rooftops, shield themselves during combat, climb vertical structures, create temporary platforms, and even restrain enemies depending on the situation. Movement should feel fluid, rather than mechanical, where every rooftop connects naturally to the next one, every leap transforming into another glide, and every landing immediately flowing into combat. Players, so to speak, shouldn't constantly think about individual controls, they should simply feel like Spawn. Combat, at the same time, deserves that same philosophy. Spawn's never fought like Batman, he's never fought like Spider-Man. His style actually combines brutal hand-to-hand combat with supernatural abilities, living chains, enormous weapons, necroplasm energy, and these devastating finishing attacks as well. A remake should preserve that variety without turning every encounter into these mindless spectacles. Power should always come with consequences, like one particularly interesting mechanic from the comic involves Spawn's necroplasm. Every time he uses it, he gradually consumes the energy keeping him alive on Earth. Earlier Spawn stories treated that resource almost like a countdown towards his inevitable return to Hell. Modern gameplay could finally build meaningful decisions around that concept. Like, imagine facing a difficult encounter where you could unleash devastating magical attacks immediately and overwhelm every enemy, or conserve your necroplasm, relying instead on martial arts, stealth, chains, and environmental advantages as well. Neither one of those choices feel wrong, both carry consequences later. In fact, that system alone creates tension unlike almost any other superhero game. Because strength isn't free, every shortcut has a price. Storytelling, however, offers perhaps the greatest opportunity of all of those. The original game, 36 years ago, understandably simplified Spawn's mythology, but today's audience are ready for something much deeper. Alfred Simmons wasn't born a hero, he was an elite government assassin betrayed by people who he trusted. After dying then, he made a desperate deal with the ruler of Hell, simply just to see his wife one last time, only to discover that years has passed, his life had disappeared, and he had become something entirely different. That tragedy remains one of the strongest origins in comic book history. A remake should allow players to experience that emotional journey rather than just simply hearing about it. Flashbacks gradually revealing Simmons' former life, conversations quietly exposing his regrets, every major decision reminding players that Spawn constantly struggles between the monster he has become and the man he refuses to stop being. Technology has changed, gaming has evolved, superhero stories have become bigger than ever, yet very few characters still occupy that very unique space between light and darkness, quite the way Al Simmons does. If someone ever decides to rebuild that original Super Nintendo adventure from the ground up, they wouldn't simply be remaking another licensed game from the 1990s, they're gonna be reintroducing players to one of comics' most fascinating anti-heroes through the kind of atmosphere, storytelling, and world design that modern hardware is just basically built for. And somewhere above the rain, that rain-soaked city, hidden among broken gargoyles and endless shadows, Spawn will still be waiting. Not for revenge, not for glory either, but for one more chance to prove that even the most broken soul can still choose which side of the darkness it belongs to.